Dallas Cowboys, a storied franchise for people over 35. If you're a fan like me who's loved them since they were young and you're not over 35, they haven't given you anything. They actually just gave you one of the worst defenses you'll ever see in your life. They had a 7-9-1 season. They had a lone tie to the Packers with 9 losses, missing out on the playoffs after a 3-game historic run where they tricked everybody into thinking they would look good. This is an issue, and this has always been a Jerry issue with the team. Jerry Jones is a big factor into why the team is where they are now. Actually, no, he is the factor of why and where the team is now. His refusal to spend big money in the offseason, his refusal to make blockbuster trades, not of recently, but his refusal to do that in the past, his refusal to draft ready now players and instead keep drafting development and project players is another huge reason we are where we are now. I say we like I'm on the team, but the Cowboys, they went 7-9-1. Funny enough, actually beat my expectations for the season. I had them going 7-10, but they ended up 7-9-1, slightly by ever so better than what I had projected. Now, let's look at some key games for the Cowboys this season. You can bring up the first game against the Eagles. A lot of stuff looked right there. Defense looked okay, not the worst. You couldn't stop a running quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Offense was looking good, aside from CeeDee Lamb dropping a couple balls. You win that game, and it's a huge start to the season. You have later on the Giants game where you see them win a big shootout, 40-37 in overtime. That was a good win. Then you have the Packers game where you tie 40-40 with the Packers. Now that's crazy because I think we should have won that game. I don't know how we stayed out of that end zone. Parsons really saved his team, but that's the tie. That tie was a difference in the season being slightly better and slightly worse than I projected. But then you start to see the big overarching issue with this team. The defense isn't up to par. It looks like crap. It gives up big plays. It can't stop the run. Can't stop the pass. It is just a all around awful unit. Scheme looks terrible, players look terrible, players are slow and lethargic, you name it. It's crazy for how bad they looked. Fasting forward to the Panthers game, that showed there. You had a really good game out of Dak Prescott, and you blew it, and you gave up 30 points and like 400 on the ground and everything else like that. Dowdle had 200 yards rushing against us. He completely owned the team. Now you go on and you lose to the Broncos and the Cardinals back to back, two really bad losses, kind of shaped the way your season was going to go. You enter the trade deadline at like 3-5, and it forces you to make some moves, which Jerry did make in the end. He traded for Quinnen Williams. That was a really solid pickup. He also traded for Logan Wilson, which was kind of a bust because we did not use him the way he should have been. Those two moves kind of bolster the next 3 games where you beat the Raiders, you beat the Eagles, and you beat the Chiefs in a big 3-game stretch that completely kind of shifted your season back to okay, now you're 6-5-1. You control your destiny. You only can afford one loss, but if you kind of win out minus one game, you can definitely get into the playoffs. Then you lose to the Lions. Then you lose to the Vikings. Then you lose to the Chargers. And you're eliminated. You're just eliminated. Defense can't stop a brick wall from moving. And you expect to make a playoff run. It was a number one offensive unit with CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, Dak, and Javonte versus the worst defensive unit you'll ever see. Now that's what spelled doom for the Cowboys this year, is their defense. Deron Bland was playing terrible. You had nobody outside of him. You had zero pass rush from Ezenraku. The only good pass rusher on your team was Clowney. I think he had like 8 sacks in 13 games, which is really good. Your linebacker play was poor. Kenneth Murray was the worst linebacker I've ever seen take up the position in my life. I mean, how did that man function? He would hit the wrong gaps. He was too slow. He couldn't cover. The only thing he was somewhat good at was pass rushing. And I'm like, hey, if you just kind of move him to a pass rusher, I'd be fine with that. Stop letting him take snaps at middle linebacker, which I'm afraid even now the Cowboys might resign him. But there was a blaring issue. Matt Eberflus was the worst coordinator I've ever seen in my life when it came to the defense. He needed to go. You needed to move on. I don't understand why it took so long for them to move on from him, but in the end, they did. Now, you end the year beating the Commanders and then losing to the Giants. So I mean, 7-9-1. But looking back at it, you beat the Packers, or you take another game against the Lions and the Vikings and maybe lose to the Chargers, or lose to the Lions and beat the Vikings and Chargers. You're looking at a 10 to 11 win season and maybe a short little playoff run. But now you know if like you can fix the defense, you can do anything because your offense is looking pretty good. George Pickens was a steal of a trade. You traded I think like a fourth round pick to the Steelers for him, and you just got a top tier receiver in return. Unlike them, who they got DK Metcalf and didn't look too hot. But look at that. Now you have two guys who can get 1,000 yards on the season. You have a 1,200-yard rusher in Javonte Williams, and you have a really well and good aging quarterback in Dak Prescott. You have the offensive success you can want. Not to mention the offensive line with the Great Wall of Tylers. Those draft picks have been really good. They just haven't been drafting defensively good lately. Now, some key injuries that might have held the team back at the beginning was the Trayvon Diggs injury that held him out for so long, but I really wouldn't argue that just because he was kind of awful. Other than that, you didn't really have too much of an injured team. No one really went out and got hurt. Everything looked pretty fine. Dak played great coming off of an injury. CD, he did have that early on concussion, but it didn't really hurt us because of the George Pickens pickup and everything like that. So that didn't really affect the season. This season was all about coaching, and it was a tale of two stories between the two coaches. You had Eberflus on one side and Schottenheimer on the other side. Schotty, I typically have had play calling issues with the Cowboys in the past, but Schotty has had a pretty good play calling and a scheme running for the offense, which made me not unhappy. Along with his offensive coordinator from the Cardinals, he called a really good run game. I know Schotty calls the plays, but he coordinates the run game. He did really well, and it's really good. It was really good to see the offense just get and stay in gear, and them not be the reason for your detrimental downfall. It was the defense. The scheme that Eberflus ran was just terrible. It was a zone scheme with man players and zone linebackers, but he ran man on the linebackers and zone on the DBs, and you just tell it was horrendous. You had safety issues. No matter what you did, your safeties were not good. Even when Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker came back from the injured list, the injury reserve, they still just looked not there. It just was incomplete. You could tell the scheme was out of place, the players were out of place, nothing was working. It was terrible. But what do you do to fix this? You do exactly what Dallas did. You hire a new defensive coordinator, a young guy in Christian Parker. I don't hate the hire, I actually pretty much like it. You let him clean his staff out and get a completely new staff. It looks like they went around hiring a bunch of the younger, scrappier coaches. You have the Muschamp kid from the Chargers. You have a pass rush coach from the Broncos. You have the defensive line coach from the Vikings, and then a couple other coaches plucked from here and there and everything else like that. Some from college. I think it's a linebackers coach from Georgia, and then defense coordinator from a college down from a smaller college. I liked it. It was young, good hires. You can argue that well they're unproven, but I think right now that is a different step in direction. I think the wanting the experience and like Eberflus is what drove Jerry to do that, so he's just kind of moving to the opposite. But you had to have a good offseason. Going into this, you got the new staff, you've made adjustments, now you have to have a good offseason. It started off really well with Javonte Williams being re signed. And then, they're talking to Aubrey, which that deal still hasn't gotten done yet. You didn't extend Pickens, but you did franchise tag him. That franchise tag is huge because now you have at least another year with him, hoping that you can get a 3 to 4 year deal done later on. But just know the better he plays and the longer you wait, the more money you'll have to pay. I think they'll probably end up trading him next year if they don't get an extension this offseason or early into next year. That is just my opinion. That's just how Jerry does it. But if you can somehow get like a first round pick for him, no complaints there. Get a first round pick, fill one of you'll have two next year, fill one of those with a receiver, and boom, you got that. Now defense is where you had to make signings. You need safety, you need defensive end, you need linebacker, you need cornerback. There was the only position that was safe was defensive tackle because you had Kenny Clark, Oso Odigizua, and Quinnen Williams. I mean, that's the only safe position. Now they made a trade for Rashawn Gary. It wasn't the worst trade. A lower round pick for Gary, and he was better than what we had since you didn't re-sign Clowney. You signed DBs in Kobe Durant and Darion Kendrick, two veteran DBs, both played on playoff teams. I don't hate that. Big signing to me was Jalen Thompson, that safety from Arizona. Really good. Good 3 year deal for him. Sign him in. Another depth piece in PJ Locke. I like that too. Now, overall, a really solid signing. They just signed Jonathan Bullard, another good defensive tackle. They signed a defensive tackle from the Chargers to shore up that position. Traded Oso Adigizua to the 49ers for a third round pick, so you got a nice day two pick right there. Overall, I give it an A offseason. But the biggest and most blaring issue at the moment is linebacker. You do not have a linebacker yet. You have DeMarvion Overshown. You move Marius Laufau to defensive end. That's not looking good. Hopefully, I mean I could be wrong, but that's just not looking good. You just don't have a linebacker. Logan Wilson retired. You didn't re-sign Kenneth Walker. DeMarvion Overshown is the only person you have on roster, along with Shamar James, a rookie, or he'll be heading into his second year. This is a big issue, and they're talking about drafting offense in the first round of the draft. I think that would be a big mistake. I know Jeremiah Love is good, but you have Javonte Williams. You can pick up a depth running back in the draft. You do not have to fall onto the top running back. You go out and you get yourself a top tier, like say if Caleb Downs or Ruben Bain Jr.'s there, you get one of them, and then you go fill the linebacker. I believe you could trade back and get Jacob Rodriguez at like 29, so you don't have to pick him at 20. If you can sneak out of that first round with Caleb Downs and Jacob Rodriguez, or Ruben Bain and Jacob Rodriguez, or Jermod McCoy and Jacob Rodriguez, I would be satisfied with that first round. Then you can freely pick with the rest of your picks some depth pieces at corner, depth pieces at linebacker, more defensive end help, and then even some offensive tackle or running back help. I wouldn't mind that. But for all the complaints that you hear, I believe the Cowboys have had a very solid offseason. They signed a lot of pieces that they needed, fixed the cornerback position a little bit, they fixed the safety position up, got a new defensive end, would like some more defensive end help in the draft. Really, still a big linebacker need. It's just I see them drafting 2 to 3 linebackers in the draft and hoping they are ready now players, which I hate and I love at the same time. Because if you can get a young player to stick with your team for a while on cheap, that's nice. But it's a hit or miss thing, especially with the draft. And lately, the Cowboys have been a little hit or miss. They typically have been good, but they've been hit or miss of the last recent drafts. I think of our 2022 class, DeMarvion Overshown is the only remaining person on the team, and that's just because he turned out to be a major steal. That being said, next year I fully believe that they improve. I don't think they're that good though. If they can field a top 20 defense and a top 10 offense, I believe they could get into the playoffs via the wild card. I see them as a 10 and 17. I saw the teams that they've got on schedule and it looks a little scary, so this it's going to be a very tough stretch for the Dallas Cowboys next year. But if they can get to 10 and 7, hitting the wild card, that would be right where I have them, improved but not there yet. I give them another year under the new defensive coordinator and more player personnel acquisition to really get to where they are. Not this year, but I believe the year after will be a better year that they can maybe take the division and hopefully go in the playoffs. But it's the Cowboys. They will always choke. Hopefully, I'm wrong for Cowboys fans' sake, but that is how I see the year going. Thank you guys for watching. This is Riley from Planet Football Podcast on our new short form video. This was the Dallas Cowboys deep dive. I hope you all guys can give us a like and subscribe and just enjoy our content. Yep. Y'all have a good one.